After years in the public eye, here's proof that Kate Middleton is ready to be queen. In recent years, Princess Catherine has fully stepped into her role as queen-in-waiting.
Princess Anne has been by her mother's side. Queen Elizabeth's daughter, Princess Anne, the Princess Royal, said it's been a, quote, honor and a privilege to be with her mother on her final journeys.
A storm is rising behind palace doors. What began as a quiet political move by Queen Camilla has now become one of the monarchy's greatest tests, a battle that could decide its very future. The crown once promised by Queen Elizabeth to her beloved daughter-in-law Catherine now stands at the center of a silent war. But when Camilla tried to bend that legacy in her favor, she faced an unshakable force, Princess Anne. Loyal, sharp, and fearless, Anne stepped forward to defend her mother's word. She knew that some promises are sacred and some crowns are not meant to be claimed by others. So the question is, how far will Anne go to protect her mother's legacy? And can Catherine truly reclaim the crown, that destiny and duty once reserved for her? Stay with us, because this isn't just a story about jewels or titles, it's a fight for the very soul of the monarchy. When sparkle vanished from the palace, the coronation should have been breathtaking. Cameras captured every angle as Charles accepted the crown, robes flowing behind him like crimson rivers. Camilla stood beside him, her own coronet gleaming under abbey lights. Yet something felt off to those who knew royal protocol inside out. Scan through the photographs carefully. Every princess, every duchess, every titled woman in attendance appeared without their signature headpieces. Catherine, whose appearances in the lover's knot tiara had become iconic, wore simple flowers woven into her hair. Anne, known for her elegant pearl and aquamarine pieces, kept her look completely plain. Even the younger generation showed up bareheaded, a stark departure from centuries of tradition. Most viewers assumed it was a stylistic evolution, perhaps a conscious choice to appear more relatable to modern audiences. After all, Charles had been vocal about wanting a leaner, more accessible monarchy. But palace insiders whispered a different story entirely. This wasn't about choice or fashion, it was a mandate. Shortly after Camilla's coronation, a memo had circulated through official channels. Effective immediately, tiaras would no longer be worn at any royal function. The language was diplomatic, framing the decision as part of broader efforts to streamline traditions and reduce extravagance. It aligned perfectly with Charles's long-stated goals about environmental consciousness and connecting with everyday citizens. Yet to those who understood royal symbolism, the ban felt like something else entirely, a calculated move to ensure only one crown mattered going forward. Each tiara in the royal collection told a story. Victoria's sapphire circlet spoke of imperial strength. Elizabeth's Girls of Great Britain piece carried the weight of a young queen finding her footing. Diana's favorite, the Cambridge Lover's Knot, had become a bridge between past and present when Catherine began wearing it. These weren't just pretty objects locked in vaults. They were living connections to history, worn by women who'd shaped the monarchy through war, scandal, triumph, and loss. To remove them from use was to sever those connections, to suggest that history before Camilla's arrival mattered less than what came after. For Catherine, the impact was deeply personal. She'd never sought the spotlight, but the tiara moments had become part of her identity as Princess of Wales. When she wore Diana's favorite pieces, people saw continuity, a visual reminder that William's mother's legacy lived on through his family. Now, sitting in her private quarters at Kensington, she felt that connection being stripped away. During public appearances, she maintained perfect composure, smiling, waving, engaging warmly with crowds. But friends noticed the strain. Her hands would shake slightly while pouring tea. Her eyes would cloud over when someone mentioned the new simplified approach. She'd dedicated years to charitable work, to raising 3 children in an impossible spotlight.
Now Princess of Wales, this is Kate showing you what she wants to do with that title, launching a new campaign
to being the steady presence the institution needed. and now she was being told, in effect, that her sparkle could be dimmed whenever it suited someone else's agenda. Anne's reaction was quieter, but no less intense. As the Queen's daughter, she'd spent decades embodying duty without complaint. Her tiara wasn't about vanity, it was armor, a visible link to her mother's reign and values. When the ban took effect, Anne found herself pacing palace corridors late at night, unable to sleep. She'd replay conversations with Elizabeth, particularly one from the final months of her mother's life. "These pieces hold our story," the Queen had said, her voice weak but clear. "Guard them carefully. They belong to those who come after us." At the time, Anne had assumed it was general advice about preservation. Now those words felt like a warning she'd failed to heed. The ban's reach extended rapidly. State banquets that once glittered with ancestral jewels now featured only Camilla's coronation pieces. Charity events came with strict dress codes, no headpieces whatsoever. Foreign dignitaries noticed and commented, though always politely. Some saw it as refreshingly modern. Others found it oddly authoritarian. This insistence that everyone conform to a new aesthetic. Social media lit up with divided opinions. Younger commenters praised the move away from outdated displays of wealth. Royal historians expressed concern about erasing visual ties to the past. And through it all, Catherine and Anne maintained public silence, even as frustration built behind closed doors. The final straw came at a summer garden party. Catherine arrived in a lovely floral dress, her hair styled simply. A visiting dignitary approached, effusive in her compliments. "This new minimalist approach suits you wonderfully," the woman gushed. "So much more relatable than all that heavy jewelry your predecessors insisted on." Catherine's smile never wavered, but inside something cracked. This wasn't about being relatable. This was about being erased, about having her place in the royal story diminished to accommodate someone else's insecurity. That evening, she placed a call to Anne. The conversation was brief, coded in case anyone was listening. But the message was clear. Something had to change, and it had to change soon. The document that changed everything. Anne had always been methodical, the kind of person who planned 3 steps ahead before making a move. So when she requested access to the Crown Jewels vault one quiet afternoon, no one thought twice about it. She was, after all, the Queen's daughter and a working royal with every right to review historical artifacts. The head curator accompanied her down into the climate-controlled chambers where centuries of treasure sat in carefully maintained silence. But Anne wasn't there to admire rubies or evaluate restoration work. She was hunting for something specific, her mother's private instructions about the collection. Royal wills are complex documents. The public versions outline succession and major assets, but monarchs often leave separate, detailed notes about personal items, particularly pieces with sentimental or historical significance. Elizabeth had been no different. Anne remembered references to such a document from discussions years earlier, but she'd never needed to consult it until now. The curator retrieved a leather portfolio, its contents protected by layers of archival paper. Inside, in Elizabeth's distinctive handwriting, were pages of careful notations. Some pieces were designated for museums. Others were earmarked for specific family members on particular occasions. And there, halfway down page 7, Anne found what she needed. The entry was unambiguous. "The St. Edward's lace tiara shall be reserved for Catherine, Princess of Wales, to be worn upon her assumption of queenly responsibilities. This piece represents continuity of purpose and dedication to service, qualities Catherine embodies completely." The date on the instruction was from Elizabeth's final year, written during a period of clear mental competency. It wasn't a suggestion or a hope. It was a directive from a reigning monarch about crown property. Anne's hands trembled slightly as she photographed the page with her phone. This changed everything. Camilla's ban, regardless of how it was justified, directly contradicted explicit orders from the late queen. In the hierarchy of royal authority, a deceased monarch's written instructions carried more weight than a living consort's verbal preferences. But possessing the document was only the first step. Anne needed to authenticate it beyond any shadow of doubt, because she knew Camilla's team would scrutinize every detail, looking for a reason to dismiss it. Over the following week, she quietly arranged for 3 separate experts to examine the will: a handwriting analyst, a historian specializing in royal documentation, and a legal scholar familiar with estate law. Each one returned identical conclusions: genuine, legally binding, and crystal clear in its intent. Armed with that validation, Anne began plotting her next moves. This couldn't be a sneak attack or a public ambush. It needed to be formal, ceremonial, unassailable in its propriety. She started reaching out carefully, beginning with William. They met for lunch at a small estate property, away from palace eyes and ears. Anne laid out what she'd found, watching William's expression shift from curiosity to anger to determination. "My grandmother specifically designated this for Catherine," he said quietly, "and someone decided that didn't matter." Anne nodded. "Which means we have a choice. We can accept that precedent, that anyone's preferences can override documented royal instructions. Or we draw a line here." William didn't hesitate. "We draw the line. Tell me what you need." With the future king on board, Anne felt her strategy solidify.
After his father, Prince Charles, Prince William is second in the line of succession to the British throne.
This wasn't about family drama or personal vendettas. This was about defending a principle that held the entire institution together. Continuity matters, promises endure, and authority doesn't expire just because someone new wants to redecorate. The next challenge was Charles. Anne loved her brother, but she knew he was caught in an impossible position: loyalty to his wife versus respect for his mother's memory. She couldn't force him to choose publicly. Instead, she needed to create a situation where protocol made the choice for him. That's when she conceived the formal reading. By framing it as a ceremonial duty, reviewing Elizabeth's specific bequests regarding the collection, she'd put Charles in a position where refusing would look like he was disregarding their mother's wishes. And once the document was read aloud in an official setting, with witnesses and records, it couldn't be quietly buried or reinterpreted. The directive would become part of the permanent record, binding on everyone going forward. Anne spent days rehearsing her approach, practicing her tone and posture. This had to come across as solemn responsibility, not personal attack. She selected the picture gallery for the reading, a room literally surrounded by portraits of past monarchs, all wearing their crowns and jewels. The symbolism would be unmistakable. This was about honoring those who came before, not challenging those currently in power. Invitations went out to Charles, Camilla, William, and Catherine, along with key household staff. The wording was formal and vague enough to avoid tipping off Camilla's team about what was coming. A ceremonial review of Her Late Majesty's specific instructions regarding collection items could mean anything.
The key difference between the crown jewels and the Queen's private collection.
But Anne knew that once everyone assembled, there'd be no turning back. The showdown in Portrait's shadow. The morning of the gathering arrived with unusual tension. Palace staff moved through preparations with nervous efficiency, sensing something significant was about to unfold without quite understanding what. Anne arrived first, dressed in a sharp navy suit that conveyed authority without aggression. She personally supervised the placement of a small display table at the room's center, where the tiara would rest alongside the open will. Every detail mattered: the lighting, the sight lines, the way documents would be visible to everyone present. This wasn't theater exactly, but it was definitely stagecraft in service of truth. William and Catherine came next. Catherine looked radiant despite the circumstances, wearing a simple dress that somehow emphasized her natural elegance more than any jewels could. William stood close to her, a silent wall of support. They exchanged brief nods with Anne, no words necessary. Everyone understood their roles. Charles entered looking troubled, clearly aware that this gathering wasn't routine but not yet certain what ambush might be coming. And finally, Camilla swept in, her bearing regal and her expression carefully neutral. She'd heard whispers something was afoot, but had been unable to pin down specifics. Now, seeing the setup, the tiara on display, the old leather portfolio, Anne's determined stance, she began to understand she'd been outmaneuvered. Anne called the room to order with quiet formality. "Thank you all for gathering. We're here to honor Her late Majesty's specific instructions regarding certain collection pieces." She opened the portfolio carefully, turning to the marked page. In her own hand, written during the final year of her reign, Queen Elizabeth left clear directions about this tiara. Anne read the passage aloud, her voice steady and resonant. Each word landed with weight, particularly the phrase, continuity of purpose and dedication to service. When she finished, the silence was profound. Everyone was processing what they'd just heard, not interpretation, not family folklore, but documented instruction from a queen who'd reigned for 70 years.
Not only is Queen Elizabeth Britain's longest reigning monarch,
Charles stood first, breaking the heavy quiet. His voice carried both resignation and relief. "My mother's wishes are plain and will be honored." He looked at Catherine with genuine warmth. "This piece was meant for you, and you shall have it when the time comes." It was a careful phrasing, acknowledging the instruction without making it about defying Camilla. But the message was unmistakable. The ban was finished, at least regarding this tiara. Camilla's face remained composed, though those who knew her well could see the calculation behind her eyes. She'd been checkmated in front of witnesses, with no graceful way to object without appearing petty or disrespectful to a beloved late queen. When the crown found its rightful place. But Anne wasn't done yet. She smoothly unveiled her second move, the Heritage Heirloom Project. Catherine would lead a digital archive of the royal collection, giving the public access to the stories behind each piece. Educational, transparent, and modern, it was a masterstroke. By pairing the tiara restoration with a forward-thinking project, Anne made opposition impossible. To resist now would mean opposing progress itself. Camilla realized it, forcing a tight smile. "A wonderful tribute to tradition and progress alike," she said, hiding her quiet defeat. Photographers entered, capturing the tiara beside the Queen's will. Anne resolute, Catherine serene, Charles relieved, Camilla composed. Within an hour, those images would dominate headlines, telling Anne's version of events. The palace issued a polished statement praising both tradition and innovation, crediting Camilla's modern vision and Anne's devotion to heritage. Yet everyone in that room knew the truth. Anne had just defended her mother's legacy, secured Catherine's future, and rewritten royal power without a single public confrontation. News of the tiara's restoration spread like wildfire across media platforms. Within hours, hashtags like Catherine's crown were trending worldwide, celebrating Anne's quiet power and Catherine's regained dignity. Commentators rushed to explain the royal precedent, while the public agreed it simply felt right. Younger audiences praised the Digital Archive project as a smart blend of history and technology. Older fans rejoiced that a long-standing wrong had finally been undone. Catherine's first public outing after the announcement became iconic. At a children's literacy event in Wales, she arrived wearing the lover's knot tiara, Diana's favorite. Cameras flashed as she greeted smiling schoolchildren, the sapphires glowing softly in the afternoon sun. The symbolism was unmistakable. Catherine had reclaimed her place, gracefully linking past and present. Social media erupted with comparisons. Before, she seemed uncertain. Now, radiant and assured. It wasn't just a fashion moment, it was a restoration of legacy. Behind palace walls, everything shifted. Charles privately thanked Anne, admitting she'd handled an impossible situation with a steadiness he couldn't have managed. William's silent embrace said it all. And when Catherine quietly took Anne's hands and whispered, "You saved more than a tiara. You saved what it means to keep promises," Anne only smiled, claiming she'd done what duty required. Yet privately, she allowed herself a moment of pride. Her mother's wishes were honored, and the monarchy's foundation stood firm. Camilla, ever the strategist, adjusted quickly. Her next speech spoke of respecting traditions and honoring the wisdom of those before us. A graceful retreat disguised as unity. Even her advisors admitted Anne's execution had been flawless. Resisting now would only damage Camilla further. Weeks later, the Heritage Heirloom Project launched with Catherine as its radiant face. The digital archive of royal jewels drew millions, each image paired with rich historical detail. Schools adopted the material, donors funded expansions, and what began as Anne's tactical victory became a lasting gift, transforming palace politics into public legacy. The real test came at a state banquet in Edinburgh months later. Catherine appeared in the St. Edward's lace tiara for the first time at a major formal event. The room fell silent when she entered, then erupted in spontaneous applause, a breach of protocol but an honest expression of collective emotion. When Catherine rose to deliver a toast, she spoke briefly but powerfully about keeping promises and honoring commitments. "Our greatest treasures aren't the jewels we wear," she said, her voice carrying across the vaulted hall, "but the integrity with which we carry them forward." The tiara caught the light from dozens of chandeliers, sparkling like captured stars. And watching from nearby, Anne felt the final piece of tension release from her shoulders. It was done. The legacy was secure, and the quiet conviction of one determined woman had proven stronger than any royal decree. So here's what it all comes down to. The real royal battles aren't fought in front of camera. They happen in quiet rooms, where principle stares down power. Princess Anne didn't need speeches or scandals. She needed proof, strategy, and unshakable belief that a queen's promise is never negotiable. Catherine may have won back her crown, but the real the words sliced deep. Each nod was a reminder that her inheritance was shrinking. Anne learned of Catherine's quiet pain through whispers. That night, unable to sleep, she wandered through moonlit galleries, portraits of Elizabeth and Diana watching her. The silence pressed in until her heart thundered with resolve. This will not stand. Meanwhile, Camilla glided through Buckingham's ballroom, her own diadem glittering above bare heads. When asked by photographers if this was new royal minimalism, she smiled serenely. "We honor the people by stripping away excess." But insiders heard the sharper truth. "I will not be outshone." Charles III, caught in the middle, tried to navigate diplomacy. Some advisors praised the ban as modern, others warned of family fractures. Pinching the bridge of his nose, Charles realized he faced a choice: public reform or private loyalty. The true cost of the ban became undeniable by autumn. At the order of the Garter, cameras lingered on the empty spaces where tiaras once glittered. News outlets zoomed in on Catherine's bare head, Anne's austere bun, Beatrice's necklace repurposed from a dismantled tiara. The absence became louder than presence. Memes swirled online, tiaras photoshopped onto scarecrows in palace gardens. The world noticed and mocked. Anne knew time was running out. Summoning her inner circle, she placed a leather-bound codicil on the table, her mother's handwritten directive. It spelled out in no uncertain terms: a particular tiara must go to Catherine upon her coronation. Even Camilla's staunch supporters gasped when they saw it. In her nursery, Catherine tucked George into bed, her heart heavy. Images of her children, once pictured in holiday cards with miniature crowns, now seemed impossible. She vowed silently, "This is about their future." Their history will not be stolen. Camilla, hearing whispers of Anne's mobilization, retreated to her study. Voice cool but sharp, she confided to an ally. Anne has her mother's papers. I will not lose this quietly. She knew she was facing an opponent unlike any before. A sister armed not with ambition, but with conviction. Courtiers began choosing sides. Notes slipped between camps. Stories praising Anne's dedication appeared in discreetly approved papers. The tension thickened like a storm cloud waiting to burst. Then came All Souls' Night, a private dinner at Clarence's house for foreign envoys. The rule was clear: no headpieces. Yet Anne entered the courtyard afterwards, a single emerald pin glinting under the gaslight. A quiet aide approached her. Camilla will ask for you after dessert, he whispered. Anne nodded. The moment had come. Inside, Camilla raised her crystal flute to toast evolution. Anne rose immediately after. To legacy, she countered, voice soft but firm. The room gasped, eyes darted. The air grew heavy with unspoken challenge. Later, in the drawing room, Camilla confronted her sister-in-law. You're playing a dangerous game, she warned. Anne unclipped her pin, placed it on the marble. I'm honoring my mother's word, she said. Her will is our guide. Without it, we betray everything she stood for. Camilla's smile trembled. She had never faced such resistance. By dawn, the ban was rescinded. A palace bulletin announced tiaras would quietly return. Royal jewelers were called back to work. The victory was not loud, it was not public, but it was decisive. Catherine soon slipped the lover's knot tiara on for a private portrait. The sparkle returned. Anne, watching from the gallery, exhaled. The war wasn't over, but the first battle was won. The confrontation had been waged in whispers, glances, and a single emerald pin, but its impact thundered across the monarchy. Tiaras were back, but the scar of betrayal remained. For Anne, the fight was never about jewels. It was about a promise. For Catherine, it was about her children's inheritance. And for Camilla, it was a reminder that power is never secure when legacy stands in the way. The war for the crown's meaning had only just begun, and what happened next would shake Buckingham to its core. The Tiara War was not over. What had begun as a decree and been overturned by one defiant confrontation was about to escalate into a campaign of strategy, precedent, and raw conviction. Anne had proven she could stop Camilla once, but whispers inside the palace made one thing clear. The queen consort was not finished. Camilla was regrouping, sharpening her tools, and waiting for another chance to cement her vision of a monarchy stripped of sparkle. And if Anne wanted to secure Catherine's crown forever, she needed more than a symbolic stand. She needed irrefutable proof, something that no decree, no modern reform, and no manipulation could erase. That proof sat in her hands one sleepless night, the parchment trembling under her fingers. It was her mother's own handwriting, the codicil Elizabeth had left behind, detailing precisely which heirlooms must be passed to which descendants. The words were clear, undeniable. Catherine was to inherit a particular tiara upon her accession. Elizabeth's script curved across the page like an unbreakable chain linking past to future. Anne knew in that moment this was her weapon. But it would take more than a document to silence Camilla's ambitions. Anne understood the battlefield she stood on. Public opinion mattered as much as palace precedent. Tradition had to be framed not as dusty relics, but as the beating heart of continuity. She would need to fight on two fronts, behind palace doors and before the eyes of the world. So Anne drew up her plan. Step 1. Secure the codicil itself, removing it from the vault and transferring it into Catherine's private safe under the strict watch of royal curators. Every seal, every wax mark, authenticated. There would be no doubt of its legitimacy. Step 2. Summon the family. Not in secrecy, but in ceremony. Charles, William, Camilla, Catherine, all called into a solemn reading of Elizabeth's wishes. To accuse Anne of personal ambition would be impossible if she cloaked the moment in duty. Step 3. Control the narrative. Select journalists, loyal correspondents would be invited. Cameras would capture the tiara resting atop velvet beside the open codicil, Catherine's hand hovering protectively. The headline would write itself, Elizabeth's words confirm Catherine's crown. And finally, step 4, innovation. Anne knew Camilla's greatest weapon was framing herself as the voice of modern monarchy, so Anne would counter not by rejecting modernity, but by owning it. She proposed the Heritage Heirloom Project, a program under Catherine's patronage to digitize every royal jewel's history and make it publicly accessible. A marriage of tradition and progress that would leave Camilla cornered. It was a masterstroke. In silence, Anne rehearsed her words, her stance, the calm way she would reveal the codicil to the family. Each detail was calculated. And when the day came, she walked the palace halls with unflinching resolve. The grand assembly began in the gallery, sunlight streaming across marble floors polished to mirrors. Charles in a crisp suit, William composed, Catherine serene yet tense. Camilla wrapped in silver-gray silk, her expression unreadable. Courtiers lined the walls, cameras poised. Anne stepped forward, codicil in hand. Her voice was steady. Her Majesty left instructions regarding her personal collection. In her own hand, she specified this tiara for Catherine when she becomes queen. She placed the document on the table, then unveiled the tiara beside it. The room fell silent. Charles cleared his throat. As king, he said slowly, I acknowledge and uphold our late mother's wishes. His words sealed the matter.
That was more than a promise. It was a profound personal commitment which defined her whole life. She made sacrifices for duty.
Protocol was locked. Camilla's eyes flickered, her mask of calm slipping for the briefest second. Anne didn't stop there. She presented the Heritage Heirloom Project. Photographs of every royal jewel would be digitized and preserved, accessible to the world. It was tradition, but dressed in the language of progress. The murmur of approval from journalists rippled outward like a rising tide. Camilla was boxed in. To resist would be to defy Elizabeth's hand and the world's applause. She had no choice but to bow, offering a careful pledge of support. In that moment, the power shifted. The tiara was secured, Catherine's crown restored, and Anne's strategy vindicated. The battle had been fought not with shouts, but with proof and precision. But Anne knew one victory wasn't enough. To secure the legacy, she needed permanence. Within hours, the palace communications team released an official statement. Pursuant to the late Queen's wishes, the St. Edward's lace tiara is reserved for Catherine, Princess of Wales, upon her accession. The news broke like thunder. Cameras flashed as official photographs hit the wires, the tiara on crimson velvet, Elizabeth's handwriting visible beside it. No one could deny it now. Headlines blazed across the globe. Elizabeth speaks from the grave. Catherine's crown secured. Anne sat for interviews, her words deliberate. Tradition is not outdated. It is the bedrock of our continuity. This is not about rivalry, but duty. When asked if her actions targeted Camilla, she replied calmly, "This is about honoring my mother's word. Nothing more, nothing less." Meanwhile, Catherine emerged into the public eye. At a children's reading event in Wales, she wore the lover's knot once again. The diamonds shimmered as she bent to read stories to wide-eyed children. The images went viral instantly. Catherine's crown returns trended worldwide. Social feeds erupted in celebration, side-by-side photos of her pre-ban and post-restoration flooding timelines. Behind the scenes, Anne tightened her grip. She convened senior courtiers, codicil in hand, pressing for a protocol change. Article 27 was amended. Any future decree regarding heirlooms must reference the Queen's last will. The motion passed, irreversible. Catherine's inheritance was now law. Camilla tried one last maneuver. A private audience in the royal library. Surrounded by leather-bound volumes, she suggested an exhibition of Elizabeth's jewels under her patronage, a way to reclaim control by appearing as guardian of the collection. But Anne stood firm. Guardianship, she said, is not a bargaining chip. The conversation ended, polite but final. And then came Catherine's triumph. A state banquet in Edinburgh. She rose, tiara glittering under chandeliers, to deliver her toast. May we remember that our greatest jewels are the promises we keep. The hall erupted in applause. The crown's sparkle was no longer just adornment. It was manifesto. Anne, seated nearby, allowed herself the faintest smile. The tiara war had ended. The crown was safe. What began as a quiet ban had exploded into one of the most dramatic struggles of modern monarchy. Camilla's attempt to strip away tiaras had been met with Anne's unyielding defense. And in the end, it was not scandal or spectacle that triumphed, but a single principle: promises must be kept. The tiara war revealed the fragile balance between tradition and progress. It showed that history is not preserved by decree, but by guardians who refuse to let it be erased. And it proved that sometimes the quiet conviction of one determined woman can shine brighter than the most glittering crown. Catherine's tiara is more than diamonds and silver. It is continuity. It is loyalty. It is the echo of Elizabeth's voice across generations. And thanks to Anne's unwavering resolve, its light will never be dimmed again. So tell me this. Was Anne right to defy a queen consort for the sake of legacy? Or should modern monarchy strip away its jewels for simplicity's sake? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Because the war for tradition may be over, but the debate for the crown's future is only just beginning.